Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. Did you know that in 2022 in the U.S. alone, there were 748 hazmat incidents that could have been prevented with better training?
Yep. Training with us gives your members the tens or even hundreds of thousands of hours of experience that we and our crew have making your people better, uniquely made for your people using the best equipment and techniques out there.
In just 3 easy steps, we can transform your team. 1, schedule a call. 2, customize your training plan. And 3, begin the best in-class training available.
So why risk choosing instructors that only have theoretical knowledge? Don't settle your team's competences at stake.
Secure your spot today. Our training slots for the upcoming quarter are almost booked up. Act now to ensure your team is not left behind.
So train differently. Head to the hazmatguys.com/hire us and get your appointment and begin your transformation today. Good morning, sir. It is a morning.
It is morning.
We recorded this already. And we thought we had this in the bag. And then it turns out that I cleverly created a cough button for myself that auto-enabled, and I was completely coughed out the entire episode. There was no audio at all. So good job, Bob.
It's funny because, Jen was like, well, can't Bob just re-record his, his stuff?
Could you imagine that?
Do you have any idea how awkward that would be to you're listening and then trying to respond and then saying your part and like the timing's got to be perfect.
That would be impossible. But yeah, so I got off the plane last night, coming home from Cold Zone. Good people, great times.
How was Cold Zone?
It was really good. We had a lot of fun, made a lot of contacts. Good people, honestly. And you know what? I'm going to give a shout out. There was a lady in the booth next to us, and I promised her I would say that Vicky Gatsky from OAI, they're hiring. So if you're interested in a program director, and it's virtual, give Vicky an email, and her email is vgatzke@oaiinc.org, and check them out. I promised her I would do that for her.
I was going to say, did you lose like a bet to do a...
She was so nice. Me and Steve were helping her out with her booth and everything. It was a very nice lady.
That's great. Oh, Steve was at the booth too?
Yeah, we had a great time.
How did Steve do? I heard things went relatively well.
Steve almost got blown up twice.
Excellent. Then you know what?
That's a story.
It's a good hazmat class when the instructor almost blows up a couple times.
Yes. So
after Cold
Wednesday,
Zone, where are you going to be?
So, June 5th, we have the After Action Report with Mike Hildebrand. That's going to be 1930 hours Eastern Standard Time. Again, comments are on, long format. Interactions are encouraged. Listen to what he's got to say about what happened in the beginning. We have Battery Destroyer Club episode 3. We'll be doing some testing, and dates will be coming soon. The new website's up, and I'm going to kind of tease it out there. The app is almost done. Yeah, tons of new HMAF, Hazmat AF. I don't want to say it anymore. Go to hmaf.pro and I saw a whole bunch of those shirts at Cold Zone this week.
Were they wearing them?
Oh, yeah. There was a whole bunch. There was a guy with big mustache, and he had a original APR one.
Oh, so he had the big mustache with the big mustache.
Yeah, it was good. It was a whole bunch of them. So, and then next week, I'm in Oklahoma doing a whole bunch of different classes. South Carolina, Baltimore, Utah, Continuing Challenge, Pennsylvania, Virginia.
And then that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a light schedule this year. Light schedule.
I was telling people on my Delta, I think my next level up is pilot.
Yes. You can't get upgraded anymore.
So, all right, let's redo this episode.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
All right. So this has kind of come up. We know some of the larger disasters throughout history, at least the ones that have been, put into the textbooks and the instructors have heard and the instructors have taught. But there are so many other kind of interesting ones out there. Not ones where obviously, 3,000 people died like in Bhopal, but little ones. And we can still learn a lot from little disasters, little things that went wrong, what are the things that made the situation worse? What made them better? Even from a technician point of view, right? Like, even if there isn't this catastrophic event, understanding the failure in the system may help us to understand how we could mitigate if we're ever in something like that, or at least start to get us kind of familiar with the situation. So we're going to focus on a disaster that happened back in 1976 in Italy, and it's known as and I am not Italian, so if I'm mispronounced, and I'm horrible at pronouncing things, Seveso? Seveso?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
It's Seveso.
We'll go with Seveso. I'll probably change it 3 or 4 times as I say it. But this is a case study in an industrial accident. It's also a little bit into like the environmental management and a touch on the emergency response.
So this happened July 10th, 1976 in Seveso, Italy, a small town near Milan. The company involved was ICMESA, or Ike Mesa, which is Industrie Chimiche Meta Società Arizonia.
With a Chimichanga Media Society of Arizona. Well, I'm in.
Okay.
I love chimichangas.
I love those things.
I don't know why they have Arizona built into this, but who knows? All right. So what kind of chemical was involved? This disaster, it revolved around the release of a toxic cloud containing, you ready for this one? 2,3,7,8 tetrachloro-dibenzo P-dioxane, which we will lovingly refer to as TCDD from now on, because I am not pronouncing that more than one time in a show. It is a it is actually one of the most toxic dioxins that are floating around the world.
Yeah, the plant was producing 2,4,5-trichlorophenol, or TCP, a chemical used to make herbicides and disinfectants. And the TCP itself was synthesized from 1,2,4,5-trichlorobenzene, or TCB, via the process that involves sodium hydroxide, NaOH, and ethylene glycol.
So already we can start to see this some fun mixtures floating around. All right, so then what technically happened? The actual failure itself. This disaster occurred when the chemical reactor started overheating. There's safety I can't talk today. There are safety devices that are implemented to control the temperature, and they ended up failing. As a result, we had an excess of over 300 degrees Celsius, which we don't have the American conversion for, but it's hot, leading to an uncontrolled reaction.
This reaction temperature was controlled by routing steam exhaust from the on-site electric generation turbine through an external heating coil wrapped around the chemical reactor vessel. Now, typically, the exhaust steam was pressurized as 12 bar and then heated to 190 degrees C. And this setup maintained the reaction's temperature at 158 C, just shy of its boiling point of 160 C. Now, we're going to come back to this. This is important.
Yeah. And so, when you're in industry and you start, figuring out these massive chemical reactions and how to do them in bulk, you always understand the limits of the materials, of the containers, of the chemical reactions that's taking place. Right. So prior tests had indicated that an exothermic, or a heat-releasing side of the reaction would occur when temperatures of the reaction mixture rose to 230 degrees Celsius. All right, so what this is basically saying is when you have different chemical reactions, especially in organic chemistry, the temperature becomes critically important. You only get the desired effect or product that you're looking for when temperatures are in a narrow range. If you go to a different temperature range, you get a completely different product, a completely different reaction, and it can go sideways if that reaction takes place.
Or the reaction can actually roll backwards.
Right, yeah, or it can roll backwards.
It can unreact almost.
Yep. Yeah, it can go in either direction. So, understanding what these different directions are super important in figuring out the safeties of the entire system. operators managing the reactor were not provided with steam temperature gauge, right? So here we have a reaction that was going to basically go critical at 230 degrees Celsius, and the people controlling it weren't able to see what the actual temperature of the steam going into it was. Now, you may sit there and go, okay, yeah, the steam is heating it up, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. This left them without critical information about this left them without the ability to truly monitor what was happening inside the reactor.
Right. So the chemical release incident occurred when a batch process was halted before the final step of removing the ethylene glycol from the reaction mixture through distillation could be completed. And this interruption was due to the compliance with Italian regulations that mandated the cessation of plant operations over a weekend. They go home for the weekend and they just shut it down, right? So as other parts of the site began shutting down after completing their process, the overall power consumption of the plant decreased. Right. So now the electric turbines are slowing down, and the reduction in power usage caused a significant decrease in the load on the turbine, leading to an increase in the temperature of the exhaust steam to about 300 degrees Celsius now.
So you think this was like the Italian Flintstones? Like the whistle blew and the guys were like,
"Oop," and we're out.
Done.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. A couple numbers of significance before we kind of move on. Critical temperature, 230 degrees Celsius. Exhaust steam in excess now of 300 degrees Celsius. Right? Because remember, this steam is actually being used to pull heat away from the reaction, not added to the reaction. So now we have a situation in which the steam is much higher and we have this buildup, right?
In the beginning, this steam was used to keep the reaction at a nice level point. If it went a little too hot, the steam would pull it out through conduction. And if it was a little too cool, the steam would put in to keep this. Now that the steam is way higher, it's actually inputting temperature into this reaction and causing it to go faster.
Yeah, it's like using a buffer in an acid and then putting too much acid in, and you negate the buffer.
Right.
So this unusual hot steam then heated the exposed metal walls of the reactor above the level of the liquid inside this within the same temperature. Without a steam temperature pressure gauge in their instruments, the operators were unaware of this additional heat going into the batch. By isolating the steam and turning off the reactor stirrer, they ultimately heated up the upper section of the reactor and they heated up the adjacent reaction mixture. With this stirrer off, obviously stirring helps, dissipate the heat throughout the entire mixture. The heating was localized to the upper layers of the reaction mixture near the reacting wall. This localized temperature rose above that critical temperature that we were talking about, and it triggered an exothermic side of the reaction that was identified in the safety test previously.
As if we couldn't get worse. The critical temperature was found to be only 180 degrees Celsius, which is 50 degrees Celsius lower than previously assumed. And at this lower critical temperature, an exothermic decomposition commenced, generating additional heat and triggering a rapid runaway reaction when the temperature reached 230 about 7 hours later.
Right. Now, remember, we're not necessarily talking about catastrophic explosions. We are talking about just disasters and releases. Eventually, the reactor's internal relief valve opened, as it should. Unfortunately, it discharged nearly 6 tons of chemicals into the air. The chemical cloud settled over an area that was approximately 6.9 square miles around the plant, and it ended up releasing chemicals like sodium hydroxide, ethylene glycol, sodium triphosphate, and between 15 to 30 kilograms of this TCDD that we mentioned earlier, which is that most batterer dioxide around.
Under normal conditions, under normal operating temperature, let me say that again, TCDD is typically found in trace amounts of less than 1 part per million. However, due to the elevated temperatures during the runaway reaction, the product of TCDD significantly increased, potentially exceeding 166 parts per million.
At these At these high temperatures, a reaction that was supposed to then take hours was completely completed. That sounded awful. Was completed within a few minutes, producing all of the TCDD that was released.
Now, the immediate impact to the response, let's just talk about that for a little bit. What happened right there. The region impacted by the chemical release was divided into 3 zones, A, B, and you would think C, but not the Italians. They're thinking R. R. So, according to the decreasing levels of TCDD, contamination in the surface oil, Zone A was the most contaminated. And that was broken down. Zone A was broken down into 7 sub-zones. And the residents were warned against touching or consuming any local produce.
So Zone A had a soil concentration of TCDD that exceeded 500 micrograms per square meter. That's for TCDD, that's a pretty significant release.
Luckily, it was a small amount of people.
Yeah, well,
the
population in that area was about 736 to 735, which is pretty exacting numbers when you're sitting and reading about it. So, yeah, and all right, go ahead. I'll hit
And Zone B had ranges from 5 to 50 micrograms per cubic meter, which is about 4,737 residents.
So as you can see, as we're coming out, these zones are getting bigger and bigger, which you would imagine when you look at the plume modeling, as you're spreading out the area, you're decreasing that high concentration. Right. Zone R, what we would probably say is Zone C, had negligible. It was less than 5 micrograms. I'm reading that right. Per milligram let me start that over again. Less than 5 micrograms per meter cubed of TCDD. And now this population area is about 31,000 persons.
Right. So now residents exposed to the toxic cloud reported that immediate symptoms like headaches, nausea, eye irritation. I remember last time we were doing that whole thing about the commercial, you remember? Like instant death.
Yes. The people being born with the head of a golden retriever, a condition known as hot dog fingers.
Yeah. Yes. All types of stuff going on.
All types of craziness.
But 19 children were hospitalized with skin lesions, and 500 individuals were treated with acute skin irritation. That incident caused 193 cases of chloracne among individuals not employed at the ICMESA plant.
The Arizona company.
Yes. I'm going to look that up. I know I looked it up last night, what chloracne was, because I didn't know what it was. And it's like basically blackheads.
Yeah, it's the blackheads that from what I remember of last time, it's the blackheads that form in the presence of the halogenated hydrocarbon.
Yeah, it says blackhead cysts and pustules associated with exposure to certain halogenated aromatic hydrocarbons. So just put that in your pipe and smoke.
Imagine how excited a pimple popper would be floating around that area.
Oh, man, Dr. Pimple Popper would be amazing there.
Were you there that day? Oh, random side note.
Yes.
Were you there that day at when we had the raviolis at work and we put on Dr. Pimple Popper?
Pimple Popper.
And we made the guy from Rescue 2 leave the table because he was physically sick.
Watch this.
By August 2nd, all of the residents in Zone A were completely evacuated. 15 days after the disaster. I want you to remember that because it kind of goes into the critique later on. By 15 days later, the area was completely secure. Post-evacuation, medical exams, laboratory tests were all conducted for all of Zone A residents, identifying 640 people affected by chloracne.
So in the immediate aftermath, an estimated 25% of all animals in Zone A were perished. By the end of July 3rd, 300 animals, mainly poultry and rabbits, were found deceased. Now, the emergency culling or killing was initiated to prevent the TCDD from entering the food chain, resulting in 80,000 animals being slaughtered by 1978. That's 2 years post. Actually, it's 18 months-ish.
Wow. That's a lot of not used. Meat. Yeah, meat. Zone B residents were not evacuated, right? So they kind of had more of that shelter in place order, but they were advised against consuming local produce and poultry. They underwent medical examinations, and vulnerable groups were identified, like pregnant women and children under 12. They were taken out of the area. They were evacuated and temporarily relocated.
And in Zone R, it was pretty simple. They just said, don't eat the local foods.
Yeah, don't touch anything. All right. So what are some of the things that they did for the identified, what would that group be? It would be identified vulnerable group. There we go. I couldn't think about it. So they set up these counseling centers specifically for the pregnant women. 26 of the people that were affected opted for legally sanctioned abortions after being consulted, while another 460 continued with their pregnancy without reported complications. It kind of makes you wonder what was talked about in these consultations, that 26 opted, right? 460 opted not to, and there was no issues with the pregnancies. Problems. So that really, it really goes to show you a lack of understanding. I mean, this was, when did we say this was? 76. So, there is such little understanding, even still right before the 80s, of the chemicals that were being used and the long-term effects, that they really didn't have any kind of solid evidence.
Right. So what were they had? Yeah. Sorry, so they had an evacuation, right? So let's talk about the evacuation, because this is one of the failures of responders, right? And I think you have one too, but evacuation was one of the. It took forever, like days, to determine. And it doesn't say whether it was the decision to evacuate what took days or the actual evacuation takes days, because I mean, I can imagine moving a lot of people takes time, but I would hope that the decision to move the people doesn't take that much time. It's nothing more than me just going, do it.
You would hope, right? So there are two ways that we could look at this, and I don't have an answer as far as what actually happened, but you have two choices, right? Either they had a release, and this first one I don't think is what happened, right? They had a release, somebody from the plant called up some local official immediately and was like, holy crap, we've got this really nasty chemical that released, and the local authority went, yeah, that's cool, hung up the phone and did nothing for days. Or they had the release and nothing was said until suddenly, the public health started going, hey, wait a second. How come people are getting sick? What's going on here? All these symptoms all linked to the same, you have a large population spread out over an area and they're all developing the same symptoms. That's indicative of a chemical release. Let's backtrack and look into it. So if that's the case, then I could say, all right, well, they did a pretty good job with the information that they had.
Right. So the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, is a designated location where responders and the recovery actions of the community, the government, they can coordinate all the disaster events, right? In this case, the EOC ended up playing a major strategic role, but it was not set up for literally days into the incident. So when you have all of these initial reports coming in and things happening without a centralized planning area, without a spot where all information can be gathered, you could absolutely start to miss key clues to help put the pieces together. Now, this disaster highlighted a couple of importance. And again, keep in mind, this is 1976, but the emergency preparedness for whole community engagement. And I get, if you have a chemical company in your neighborhood, they should be doing, or you should be doing, okay, what is happening? How are we going to get this out? Today, we got Amber Alerts, we got text messaging, we got all types of stuff that we can utilize. Back then, they didn't, but also resource management, safety protocols for responders. It led to the enactment of the Seveso directive, which we're going to talk about later, which is actually a thing.
Yeah.
Now, let's go through the chemical, because we've said this TCDD, but we should kind of we'll just give out his rap sheet. It's chemical physical properties. This 2378 tetrachlorodibenzo-P-dioxin is exceptionally toxic chemical, often cited as one of the most dangerous compounds synthesized by any industrial process. The detailed breakdown of its chemical and physical properties are...
All right. The molecular formula, C12H4, chlorine 4, and oxygen 2. Has a molecular weight of 231.97 grams per mole. It is heavy, very heavy. And its structure has 2 benzene rings connected by 2 oxygens forming the dioxide. The 4 chlorine atoms are attached to the benzene ring, and the specific arrangement is absolutely crucial as it significantly enhances the molecular's toxicity. So what does that mean? This specific arrangement is crucial. Well, like so many other organic chemistry things, right? You can have that exact same formula. Those chlorines, there could be 4 chlorines, but they're in slightly different locations, and that changes the chemical and physical properties of the chemical altogether. So this one is extremely critical as far as where everything sits in relation to each other.
Now, as far as physical properties, it's colorless, it's odorless. Under normal conditions, the solubility is poor in water, but it's very soluble in organic solvents such as oils and fats, which you have. So this lipophilicity allows it to accumulate in biological tissues, leading to its persistence in the environment and bioaccumulation in living organisms. Nice to know is its melting point's approximately 305 to 306 Celsius. The vape pressure is extremely low, indicating that TCDD does not readily evaporate into the atmosphere at normal temperatures. However, when they had this whole thing going on, it was way above normal temperatures, which everybody knows if you raise the temperature, you raise the vapor pressure. And finally, to wrap this part of this up, the stability. It's chemically stable. And it's resistant to degradation. Yeah, okay, we're good then.
It's chemically stable. Woo!
Right, and resistant to degradation under environmental conditions, which contributes to its long environmental half-life, and that's where we'll break it for this week.